Good morning everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Now, I've been trying to do these what we eat in a week videos fairly regularly, maybe a couple of times a month. Generally speaking, I have the camera in the kitchen anyway, and I'm filming whatever I'm making. I just don't necessarily get the end result or collate it. So what I'm going to try and do is do these maybe every fortnight for a week out of that fortnight and collate it, but you'll probably get some cross. So some people purposely look for these videos because they just want the short bits. They just want the end result, the inspiration of what we ate and that sort of thing. But most of what I have in these videos, I have the long form video for as well. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do these short ones, say fortnightly. I'll work out a bit of a schedule for it for myself. I'll try anyway. And then the rest of the time I'll share the long format for everyone else. The processes of how I'm making it and the days, how the day goes by doing the process from start to finish, because there's a lot of people who enjoy that as well. So catering to both capacities. These what we eat in a week videos do tend to get a new audience, which is really great for me. They must come up in search algorithms better. More people watch them, so it is beneficial for me to do them, and it is kind of neat to look back. I do keep a record in my planner each week as to what we eat, out of curiosity as to what we're going through, and I notice that some weeks are a lot better than others. So I'm not going to pick and choose what I do and don't share. You're just going to get a week, a 7-day period, and sometimes I'm going to look back at the video as I'm editing and go, ugh, that was a bit of a crappy week for food. But that's the way it goes, and that's part and parcel of it all, because the whole point is that we do the 6 to 8 weekly groceries, and so some weeks are better than others. Sometimes my energy levels are better than others. Sometimes there's so much going on that food just becomes too hard and I go with the easy stuff, or I get the kids and Darryl to do the stuff that I've already prepared, like, jars of soup off the shelf with pasta is a really simple one that I do all the time. It gets to 5:30 and I haven't organised anything for dinner. There's some leftover bread from the day before, so I go grab a couple of jars of soup off the shelf, add some macaroni pasta to it, and it's one of the kids' favourite meals. So this is this week. So this started from around about the 27th, I think it was, the 27th of December, so a couple of days post-Christmas, which means that there's still a fair bit of leftovers involved in this week, and using up what we had, but also food, a little bit meh about food after doing it all for Christmas. So heavy on the carbs, heavy on what the kids wanted to eat, like letting them choose dinner rather than me having to think about it, and things like that. So this is the week from the 27th, and it's a 7-day week, and we actually started the week with pizza and ended it with pizza, so shows what kind of a week it was. So here you go. Hope you enjoy watching. So as I've said previously, I really only show 2 meals in a day, and that is a lunch and a dinner meal, because Darryl and I don't eat breakfast. We have coffee at breakfast time, and then I do a cooked meal that becomes the kids' lunch, and then we have dinner. The kids do have breakfast, but it is a bit of a serve yourself breakfast. So it is cereal with rice milk. I buy rice bubbles, cornflakes and Wheat Bix, or it is porridge, which I quite often make for them, or Surreal will make for them. Sometimes baked oatmeal bars that I have made, or yogurt and granola that I've made. Leftovers, if there's leftovers. They're known to have leftover pizza for breakfast. And things like that. Smoothie pops, so frozen fruit smoothies in the ice block style, or a fresh one if someone wants to make it, things like that. So they do eat breakfast and a morning tea, generally speaking. So if they've had cereal for breakfast, they might have smoothie pops for morning tea or things like that. But I don't record any of that because it's a bit of a serve yourself thing for those meals, and I don't record every moment of every day, and I especially don't record every moment of the kids' days. So nearly all of these days will only have 2 cooked meals per day. So on the 27th, lunch was leftovers, which we have a lot of at post-Christmas. So it was cold ham or roast meats and potato salads and leftover trifle, cookies, desserts, all that sort of thing. It was just a big leftover spread, and I didn't film it because it was just serve yourself leftovers for lunch that day. For dinner we had pizza. So pizza was requested in the morning, so I did a same day yeasted pizza dough for this one. It's nice and warm at the moment, so you can do the same day yeasted doughs. I don't do a lot of yeasted doughs, but I do have a pot of yeast in the fridge because it is just super handy to have it there for quick use. You can do a naan dough in like 20 minutes if you're using yeast, so it's always handy. So it was a same day yeasted dough, and it was warm enough that I could make the dough in the morning, let it do a rise, shape it into balls, and stick it in the fridge, and then use it in the evening. So it had its second retard in the fridge before using it for the pizzas, and we tend to use the same sort of thing on our pizzas all the time. We use salami. I have home canned pizza sauce, home canned pineapple. We use tinned corn. This one had smoked chicken and bacon on it. The kids and Darryl don't have cheese because they don't do dairy, so I normally make a duck egg mayo to drizzle over the pizza once it's cooked. Hollandaise is really nice drizzled over once it's cooked too, but Hollandaise is a little bit more effort, so I don't always make that, but Darryl does request that on occasion, so we make Hollandaise to drizzle over it as well. I used the Bakerstone pizza box that I bought from Bunnings. That my initial review wasn't real great on it, but I have improved the usage of it, and now I'm a little bit sad that the barbecue isn't wide enough that I can't use two of them at the same time, because that would make pizza night a whole lot quicker. Each child gets a whole pizza, so if they all have the same things on them, mind you. I don't pick and choose what goes on them because they all eat the same thing, but it means that they eat what they want of the pizza for dinner, and then the rest of it goes into the fridge, and they have that for leftovers the next day. On the next day, the 28th, for lunch we had baby potatoes cooked in the cast iron. So these were little tiny potatoes from our homegrown potatoes that I had put aside because they were really nice and tiny, so I thought they'd work really well in the cast iron pan. Leftover ham that I fried up, and some eggs, and we drizzled it with mayo. So just a very standard, using what we had, breakfast. Would be nice to have some veggies in that as well, but we are a bit low on non-frozen vegetables at the moment because the garden isn't doing very well, and I don't really like frozen vegetables used in this kind of a thing. I like fresh ones. But that was lunch or breakfast, and the kids had the leftover pizza, and they had some eggs and ham as well with some tortillas, I think, that day, so they had bits and pieces of what was left. For dinner that night we had risotto. So we only buy prawns once a year. They're quite an expensive per kilo thing. It's $22 per kilo, and we buy them raw and green, so it's $22 per kilo with the heads and shells on. So once you take that off, you're looking at half that amount. So we only buy it once a year as a specialty, and we buy them raw and frozen so they can go in the freezer, and we can pull them out over the weeks following Christmas. So Darryl requested the prawn risotto that I make. So I use the Thermomix to make the risotto base. I double the recipe. Mostly there's a bit less liquid and things like that. I adapt it very slightly to make sure it fits in the jug, but I double the recipe of a basic risotto Milanese is what it's called. Normally has saffron in it, which makes it quite yellow. I don't bother with the saffron, but it's a fairly basic creamy risotto base that I make. I don't add anything in the way of proteins to the risotto in the Thermomix because I'm already using the max capacity of the Thermomix to make the risotto. So what I did was I cooked the other stuff separately. So the base risotto has chicken stock in it, some stock paste. There's no dairy. There's a bit of white wine, or white wine vinegar is what I use because I don't have any white wine at the moment, and salt, pepper, onion, garlic. Just real basic creamy risotto base. The prawns, because they're frozen, I stuck them in the fridge in the morning to defrost, and then when I was ready to use them, I peeled them, and then I sliced them in half and into chunks, which is going to make it go a little bit further. Like, it's lovely to eat whole prawns, but then you need too many for the quantity of people. If you cut them up, it works better. So I cut them all up for ease of spreading further. I also chopped up some bacon. So bacon and prawns, in my opinion, sort of go together. They just taste wonderful together. So I diced up some bacon. We just buy the economy bacon. It's all weird and wonderful, different shapes and sizes, but it works perfectly fine for this sort of purpose. Chopped it up into chunks and fried that off, and then fried the prawns with the bacon as well. You'll have to excuse the flies here. Anyone who hates flies will have to look away. With seafood out, the flies were really bad. I have a fan on the bench which keeps the population lower, but there's not a lot I can do about it when your kitchen is out on the patio. I have food covers for everything that's cooked, but when it's raw and you're handling it, it makes it a little bit hard. So I cooked off the bacon and the prawns ready to go. I added some ghee to the Thermomix bowl once the risotto was cooked, and then realised it'd be too hard to mix through. So I got a big bowl out. That's why you can see when I pour the Thermomix out, there's all that grease on top. I just added some ghee, melted ghee on top to it. So I poured it into the big bowl, and then I added some coconut cream as well. Normally you would add parmesan or something at this point, and we don't use dairy. So I do add nutritional yeast quite often. I didn't in this particular one because it's rich enough as it is, but I did add a dash of coconut cream to loosen it up, as well as that ghee, and then mixed it through. Now, because I do a double batch in the Thermomix, some of the rice is a little more cooked than a perfect risotto. We're not fussy, I don't mind, and all I do is I just mix through the stuff that's a little bit broken up with the stuff that has nice shape to the grain and nice texture, and it works perfectly fine for us. So I added the bacon and the prawns, mixed it through, and we served it up with some greens. We only had some broccolini, I think, sitting in the fridge, and not much else. I think there wasn't much in the way of vegetables sitting anywhere, but normally I'd really like to serve this with some spinach mixed through it and things like that, but the garden is not working for us, so access to that kind of stuff is a little limited at the moment. So that was dinner that day. On the next day, which was the 29th, I still had half pork roast sitting in the fridge. We'd smoked half of it to have as a roast, and we'd eaten the rind over potatoes, but we had half of the pork still sitting there in a bag that needed to be used. So what we did was Darryl minced it up for me, just ran it straight through the mincer, the Louvel mincer that we got, which is absolutely fabulous, and then I turned it into sausage rolls. So all I did was I got him to mince bacon when he minced the pork mince as well, so there was minced bacon through the pork as well, and I added I didn't have any breadcrumbs, so I added almond flour, which I buy from Costco, the really fine blanched almond meal basically, which works really well as a replacement to breadcrumbs if you need it. So I added that. I did eggs, caramelized onion that I had cooked the day before. We'd had a couple of frozen bags of onion that needed to be used. I needed the space in the freezer. They'd come in one of the hampers, so I just caramelized them up and then put them into small bags to use. So I added the caramelized onion, some garlic, salt, pepper, I think I already said eggs and the breadcrumb, that sort of thing. A fairly basic sort of a mix, and then mixed it through my hands. You don't want to overmix your minced meat because it will go tough, so you want it to be blended without being handled overly so I just gently mixed it all through. I use puff pastry sheets, bought puff pastry sheets. I don't make my own puff pastry. This is Borg's brand. It's dairy free. It's fairly inexpensive at Costco, and it's nice and simple. Cut it in half vertically, and all I do is just lay the mince down the middle and then roll them up. I cut them into 4 so that they cook quicker, and then I repeat, and I cook it in batches. So I was 3 kilos of mince, so I made a lot. A lot. But I did it all because it can go in the freezer or the fridge and be eaten as it was. Dinner that night was bolognese, so it was my standard easy bolognese. We do 1 kilo of dried spaghetti noodles, 1.2 kilo bag of my frozen bolognese mix, which is all the vegetables and mince and barley and stocks and all that. And then I add a jar of my canned pasta sauce, so a 27 Fowler's jar, which is about 600 mils. And that's my pasta sauce that has all the vegetables and everything in it as well. And we add that to loosen up the bolognese sauce, mix it through the pasta, and that is dinner done. We don't tend to serve anything with bolognese. It's enough of a meal on its own. The pasta's the carbs, all the veggies and the mince are in the sauce and that sort of thing. So that was dinner that night. The next day was the 30th, and we had leftover sausage rolls for lunch. That was the simple thing. Stuck them on a baking tray, stuck them in the barbecue, warmed them up, and had them for lunch. I had made a batch of apple butter barbecue the day before, which I'll show you again in something else. But so we had it with fresh apple butter barbecue might have been that day that we had it because it was hot. I remember we ate the hot sauce with the sausage rolls. But anyway, apple butter barbecue with the sausage rolls was really nice. And dinner that night we did stir-fry noodles. So I had a head of cabbage and a whole lot of carrots, some tin corn, and then the noodles from Aldi. We buy the pre-made noodles from Aldi. I can make Asian style noodles, and I do make them on occasion, but it's another thing that just works out more efficiently to purchase. They have long shelf dates. We buy the refrigerated ones, but even so they have long best before dates, and we don't use huge amounts per meal, so it's easy just to grab a few packets on our 6 weekly shop and have it twice or 3 times in the month. I use the Recipe Tins stir-fry sauce, which is absolutely delicious, and we just stir-fry all the veggies up. It had chicken in it, chicken thighs from that we had marinated and cooked previously, so it had chicken and the veggies and the noodles, the stir-fry sauce, and it's one of the kids' favourite meals. On the 31st, for lunch, there was leftovers again. So there was leftover sausage rolls still, there was leftover bolognese from 2 nights ago, and there was leftover stir-fry from the night before. So it was just a help yourself to all the containers of leftovers in the fridge, whoever wants what, so that they can all be cleaned out of my fridge and nothing goes to waste. So that was lunch that day. I'm pretty sure I just had sausage rolls, but everyone had bits and pieces of whatever was left there. And for dinner, we had beef birria tacos. Now, I have been sent a few TikToks about these and they looked really delicious. So when I bought the whole chuck, I decided that that's what I was going to give a go. I'm going to definitely make this again, and I'm definitely going to do it slightly differently next time, but it was absolutely delicious. I do have more footage of this making this one, so I'm just giving you highlights in this video, as I said, but I might make the second batch and then put the 2 lots together, because I think I'm going to make a pork one this time and do things slightly differently. So basically the birria is a beef stew made with a specific type of chili. So we made the stew, it cooked on the stove for 3 or 4 hours until the meat fell apart. And then afterwards you pull the meat out and you shred that meat and you use it on corn tortillas as tacos. The tacos are dipped in the fat that's on the top of the stew, and then they're fried and you use the beef in there. I made the kids some Mexican style cashew cheese that we used on there as well, and then they get fried off and eaten. We didn't really serve anything with these because they were just too nice on their own. It's an expensive meal for us. It was 2.5 kilos of chuck steak used in one meal, which is why I'm going to try and do it with pork, because pork is half the price. We also made another batch of the trifles because this is New Year's Eve. So we made another batch of the trifles, and Darryl and I, the ones that I made for us, I spiked the sponge with a little bit of Kahlua to make it just that little bit extra special for the day. So that was dinner and dessert for our New Year's Eve. New Year's Day was the next one, the 1st of January 2023. We don't drink, so, well, not really. We have the occasional bit of alcohol. It's not adverse to alcohol. We just don't drink. So no hangovers to worry about. So first, what I did was, on the 1st for breakfast, we did a Dutch baby pancake. So this is a great way to use up a whole lot of eggs. We use 18 eggs for it, and we cook it in a cast iron pan. This day we served it with bacon bits and some homemade maple faux syrup, like a sugar syrup with maple essence in it, maple flavoring in it, but sometimes we have it with blueberry jam, like some blueberry sauces and things like that. It depends on what I have around. Or we have it with stewed cinnamon apples is really nice as well. Whatever I happen to have, we serve it with, but this particular day we had it with bacon bits and the maple syrup that I made. The pretend maple syrup that I made. For dinner that night, we had the chicken pesto pasta that I really love. I've got a short here of how I make it, and it is a favourite of ours. The kids had it with dried spirals, and we had it with sourdough pasta. So I made the sourdough pasta like 2 days prior. I mixed up the dough for the pasta, and then it has to sit in the fridge for 48 hours to finish fermenting, and then you roll it out and make the pasta. So I did that. The kids really do like the sourdough pasta, but the quantity that is eaten for 8 people is quite high. So what I need to do is I need to get a larger pasta drying rack so that I can make larger quantities at a time, and then we might be able to sort it out so that they can have it as a meal as well. But generally speaking, I just can't make enough for 8 people, and they're happy with the dried pasta. So They had dried pasta spirals and we had the sourdough noodles. Normally I put a whole lot of spinach through this dish, but again, no garden, no spinach, and it's just unfortunate. But it is really delicious regardless. Then the last of the 7 days was the 2nd of January, and we had sourdough bagels for lunch. So I do a quadruple batch of sourdough bagels. It lasts us a couple of days that way. I do it as an overnight dough, so I do the dough the night before and then I leave it out to proof overnight, and then I come and get to it in the morning. This time of year you have to get to it pretty early in the morning because it overproofs really quickly. As soon as the sun comes up, the weather climbs and it overproofs, so I have to get to it fairly early in the morning when I'm going to do these at this time of year. I do all the standard. It's all the standard. It's into balls, then in holes in the middle, then they're boiled, and then they're baked. There is a whole video on these as well, so I will try and remember to put videos in the cards, but anyone who's watched me before knows how well that normally works out. I'll try. So I cook them in the barbecue in batches. I get 2 half trays, 2 quarter trays. It ends up making about 32, I think. And they always end up a little bit overcooked on the bottom, a little bit crispy on the bottom because of the barbecue, but I haven't figured out how to stop that. I might need to, maybe if I double or triple up the silicone liners for the trays, then that might help the bottoms not cook so bad. We'll see how we go. And then for dinner that night, we had pizza again because it was requested. So I don't think I realised that I'd had pizza only 7 days before. We do have pizza once a week normally, so this isn't really that big a deal. But I'd actually got it requested early enough that I had made sourdough pizza dough. So when I made the sourdough pasta, I'd made the pizza dough as well so that it could have the full 36 to 72 hours in the fridge. So I mixed it up and let it proof overnight, and then I shaped it into balls and stuck it in the fridge, and it stayed there for a day and a half, I think, this particular one, which gives some really great flavour and texture to the pizza dough. If I can, this is the way I prefer to eat my pizza, not with the same day dough. I definitely like one that's had a 36, 72 hours sort of a fridge retard because the flavour is better, the texture is better. You have to have fridge space to be able to do it though, and you have to plan far enough ahead, and that's not always a forte of mine. So we did pizza standard again, same style. We do all the same toppings. We actually had some cooked and seasoned pork mince as well to use on this one, and made them up with the corn, the pineapple, the pizza sauce. Darryl has anchovies on his. Other than that, it's all pretty normal. I do mine with cheese, and I do find that every time I try and cut it on video, I manage to stuff up the cut. But, you know, this was the one with cheese for this particular day, which is always the last one that's cooked in case the cheese spreads anywhere. That way I can let it cool before I scrape it off. So that was dinner for the 7th day. So that was what we ate in the week between, what was it, the 27th to the 2nd. So hope that gave some inspiration on things that you can add to your meal rotations, or if you just enjoyed watching, then that is cool too. As I've been saying, I badly need to get the website up so that I can have the recipes, so that I can just link to all the recipes I mentioned rather than trying to skip and change and remember to put cards to videos and things like that, because it's not something I remember to do. By the time I get this voiceover done and then get inside and get it synced up to the video and then get it uploaded and get thumbnails and everything else, I forget. It becomes just a run-on of tasks that I tend to forget to do. So I should maybe make time to come back and do it later, but then you've already watched it, so it doesn't really matter, does it? So if I can get a website going, at least I can do it that way. Anyway, thank you for watching again today, guys, and I will see you again next time. See you later.